This could take quite a bit of time.
Pardon my autonomy. I know one day they'll honor me. This ain't pertaining to 28 Deuteronomy. Self-determination, controlling our situation. Ain't no more indoctrination from pale faces. How the fuck you bummy and broke but a pair of races? My lineage free people of color with a left maker. Each nigga. This right here maroon, now it ain't burgundy. If you plotting murder, I'm certain that you'll need surgery. Hurt from when the burner squeeze. Protecting tribe fitness. Only consulting with governments tried to tribe with it. Please don't confuse us with those considered native. Semi-autonomy never was in our nature. Just address me as Estelusti. Wild Indian status and Cherokees riding Ruchis. In my war bonnet, if you want it, bring it to your region. And black forces the same color the European. Pardon my autonomy. I know one day they'll honor me. This ain't pertaining to 28 Deuteronomy. Self-determination, controlling our situation. Ain't no more indoctrination from pale faces.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folk. You never find a white aborigine. Aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine.
After much self-reflection, I have come to the realization that there is one thing very Indian about you, and that is that you became the Democratic nominee without a single vote. Bitch, you pulled the biggest scam of all time. No Indian I know, from the call centers to email phishing, no Indian I know has scammed 250 million people. Not bad, Kamala. That's pretty good numbers. If you manage to actually win the election, you will have pulled off the biggest Indian scam of all time. From here on out, your new name is not Camelto actually. It is now Kamala. Kamala Harris. Don't act like us. Don't act like us. Don't act like us.
You're home, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, late July with your family, and you make this historic decision. Tell me the story.
Look, the polls we had showed that it was a neck-and-neck race. Would have been down to the wire. But what happened was a number of my Democratic colleagues in the House and Senate thought that I was going to hurt them in the races. And I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did someone, and I thought it'd be a real distraction, number one. Number two, when I ran the first time, I thought of myself as being a transition president. I can't even say how old I am. It's hard for me to get out of my mouth. And, but things got moving so quickly, it didn't happen. And the combination was that I thought it was a critical issue for me, still is not a joke, maintaining this democracy. But I thought it was important because although it's a great honor being president, I think I have an obligation to the country to do the most important thing we can do, and that is we must defeat Trump.
I saw those images.
And hit me with the mute. I'm back with it though. Check it out. Homeboy with the news. We're gonna get straight to it, man. We got a good show today. We got Dr. Anthony Dixon coming through. All right. We're gonna talk about the Negro War with the Black Seminole project. But in similar fashion, you know how we do. We always start off, get the room ready, make sure everything right. Gotta hit a little bit of current news. So just to update y'all, last time we didn't talk, you see the boy Trump, he on the campaign trail like crazy. You know what I'm saying? He did a live stream with old buddy Aiden Ross. And then he was just on yesterday on X with that boy Elon. All right. So you can't say that he ain't outside, right? He ain't out here all kind of different. We covered him with the Black Journalists Convention not too long ago. So he been on it. But the real question is, what Kamala been at, bro? Whereas you would think if you got to make up for time, she would be on the grind like crazy right now because, you know, you ain't got but a couple of months, right? So it seems like it's a lot of people that's calling her out, like from the media saying, you know, what's up? What are interviews? What are, you know, when we going to do something? So anyway, the reason why she feel like she got it in the bag, because I'm finna show y'all, we're going to correlate this to an older news story we was covering with Tiffany Haynes, right? We're going to do an update on that. But I want y'all to see how Kamala feels so comfortable because they already got the celebrities and, you know, the same usual cast out here doing the bidding. So we're going to start with that boy, Ricky Smiley. Man. I want y'all to hear how Ricky Smiley, how these celebrities trying to influence us and basically bully us into going at they demand. So check it out. Let's peep game now. I'm going to bring him up and we're going to chop it up.
Entertainment, sports. It's the front page on the Ricky Smiley Morning Show.
All right, 24 minutes after the hour, y'all got your front page right here. Maria, good morning.
Here's what's happening in news. Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota held their first joint campaign rally together in Philadelphia. Kamala Harris praised Walz going down his list of titles from coach to congressman and even military veteran. She ended his introduction, Ricky, saying, and in 91 days, the nation will know Coach Walz by another name, Vice President of the United States. Are you excited about Tim Walz? I already know the answer to that question.
Always.
What excites you the most about him?
Just that he's just a regular, like he reminds you of your high school principal. He reminds you of your high school football coach, and he was a football coach that led his team to a state championship. And he is just awesome. He's for the people. He stand up for women's rights, and he's a popular governor in the great state of Minnesota, which Trump won in 2016. That state was picked off by Joe Biden, and I think we'll definitely get his state and the state of Pennsylvania as well. Either one of those governors would have been a great choice for Kamala Harris. I'm just sick of the black people on the internet talking about I'm not with her. Okay, so if you're not with
Now make sure y'all listen to this part now.
her, that means you with Trump. And y'all need to block every last one of their asses on Facebook and on Instagram and social media and stop. Like that's just garbage.
Yeah.
It's just garbage.
Can
Everybody
we be
got to
united
find,
on anything?
Can't agree on a damn bucket of chicken. One person want a hot dog.
I always complain.
Black folks get on my damn nerves, man. Why everybody making all these celebrities making all these videos going off on Kamala Harris and stuff, and then the black men, Kamala Harris didn't prosecute you and treated.
Now you hear what he say. This is how they fuel this gender war and play these games. So he say the black men, she ain't did nothing to you. You make sure he threw this in. You heard when he said he was supporting her because of women's rights, and he ain't want to talk about nothing in specific, but you hear he said that now, P gang.
Treat you bad in court. I got treated bad in court too, but I'm with her because a vote for her If you sit at home and you don't support her, you are definitely supporting Donald Trump. You can vote for who you want to, but don't be trying to encourage other people and sit up there and put bad stuff. Where's that same energy for Donald Trump?
Yeah. Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm just like, don't vote for him. It is what it is.
They're not even doing, y'all not even out here doing real research to look at her record. If you do the research or whatever, stop believing everything you read and do real research, you can see what a record is. You can see what she have done. I think you can Google what have Kamala Harris done for the black community or things that black people benefit from a lot. We need to stand with her. We need to stand with her.
Listen to this shit, bro.
She'll make a great president. And what a blessing to be living in the time where a black woman can become president of the United States of America. In our time, we get a black man and a black woman become president. That's unheard of.
Come on, man.
Stop it.
Messy. Be on the right side of history. Be on the right side of history.
That's so, it's just the Amber Rose and everybody got all these videos. And
Bruh, did y'all hear that? They said be on the right side of history. So the right side of history is what you say it is, bro. You feel me? Listen how they talking at us. We should block people who disagree with what we said, not have conversations and figure out who the best. We shouldn't even listen to him because it's nothing that could possibly be good about Trump, and Kamala just perfect. She the one. Think about what they saying, bro. And this is coming from black people. That's how they do the bid. They don't gotta have white folks do this for us. They send the celebrities to do this.
Stuff and talking about Kamala Harris talking out of both sides of her. How would you say something so disrespectful? Even if you felt that way, I wouldn't dare make a video or say nothing like that to the vice president of the United States of America that's trying to stand up and that's going to possibly pick 2 United States Supreme Court justices or whatever to try to keep the laws in place that Thurgood Marshall and all of the people that have paved the way and try to redo and get back into some of this settled law, women's rights to choose, your voting rights, and Brown versus the Board of Education. Do your homework, black people.
Hold up. Let me just tell you something right
here.
Do
your homework.
Very historic, and Kay pointed this out to me. If Kamala Harris is elected, she would be sworn in.
She could be sworn in
MLK Day
by the first black Supreme
and
Court,
possibly by Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Wow.
Does that not give you chills?
Stop it.
Did y'all hear did you hear what was just said? They setting the play up. They already got the stage set to stir up our emotions with this symbolism. Now peep game now.
Does that not send
Maria?
Make your whole body vibrate.
Maria,
oh my
I can go deep into that. You got a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated reading in a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated into the damn White House. What's wrong with y'all?
Come on, man.
MLK holiday.
But y'all mad because she ain't talking about reparations.
Who was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated?
Come on now.
Come on now. Oh my God, that just gave me chills.
That
gave me chills.
Game changer, dog.
Game.
Man,
Talk about game.
Y'all better come get me off this radio today.
Come get him.
Hey, you keep going. You want to keep going, dog? You want to keep going?
Oh, they ain't gonna be mad at you today, Rick.
Hey, man.
I don't care. Well, stop the music.
Go, dog. Go.
I don't care about who get mad. I know I'm right. I know I'm right.
He said
y'all
he
need
know
to
he
stop.
right.
Do y'all realize Medgar Evers died for voting rights? All these people that have risked.
Bro, our voting rights is not at stake. What is these folks talking about?
Still alive from slavery up until the civil rights movement, just where we can have an opportunity to do what we do, to do what we can do. We ain't seen nothing like this since Barack Obama was running for president in 2008. We need to stop.
The great John Lewis.
Right. John Lewis and Ralph Abernathy. All of these people that have paved the way for us. We are the new civil rights leaders. We got to get behind people like Ben Crump and Kamala Harris and all these people.
That boy say Ben Crump and Kamala Harris, man, tap in the chat. Y'all think Ben Crump and Kamala Harris is who we need to put our faith in, bro? Think about what that man's saying. I gotta know who around because I don't even want to talk to no people who think that's the truth. Please let me know.
Out here that's doing like Roland Martin and all of these people that's out here, and Joy Reid. If you want to be educated, if you really want to know the truth, all you got to do is turn to MSNBC and watch Joy Reid, and she gonna give you a whole
And that boy say, if you want to know the truth, all you gotta do is turn the TV on, bruh.
History lesson every night on MSNBC, and then after that, Rachel Maddow. All you gotta do is just watch it.
And it's not opinion, it's facts.
Don't do this right here.
Yeah, and
don't
you
be
know
on the internet doing Kamala Harris like that.
Yeah,
I don't care what issue you got with black women. Your mama's a black woman.
What?
How about that? Let's start there.
Kamala?
I don't care what. And I'm talking to the men right here. Your mother is a black woman. Don't forget that. Don't forget that your sister is a black woman. And as a black man, I stand proudly with Kamala Harris this morning with tears in my eyes. It means so much to me. Do you know the lady picked up the phone and called me when my son died? How about that?
This now.
How about how personal her and Joe Biden has been? How about Joe Biden wrote me a letter naming my grandkids and naming my son's name in a personal handwritten letter? How kind, how thoughtful, how genuine, they're just genuine and sincere. And I love people like that. And anybody, the person that got killed at the Trump rally, who do you think called that man's wife to offer his condolences? Joe Biden did. Joe Biden did. Trump didn't call him. And
okay, so hold on. He said he told us to do our research, right? So to do our research, and we should just trust him. He know he right. We don't know nothing. He just the best for us. Ricky Smiley, a comedian who was dressing like a woman and playing a crackhead and some more shit. All of a sudden, you have all the information that we need to know, and we need to trust you because he wrote you a handwritten letter. Boy, come on, man. I don't know what to need. I don't know, like, that's disrespectful to me. How you gonna tell me that, bro? We don't live the same life. You ain't no serious politician to come tell me what's what. So check this out. Let's go over here. He said that Joe Biden just super compassionate, calling everybody after, when something happened. So he said something out of his mouth that Biden hit up, it was a firefighter that was shot at the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So, somebody actually died. So peep game. We're just going to I just went to Google, right? So it says the widow of the man who was killed at former President Trump rally on Saturday said she had spoken to the former president, Helen Comper, I don't even know how to pronounce that, who lost her husband, Corey, shared in a post on social media that she exchanged words with Trump after the assassination attempt. He was very kind and said he would continue to call me in the days and weeks ahead, she wrote. She said the former president said her 50-year-old husband left this world a hero and God welcomed him in. Her sister, Kelly, said the family had spoken to other Trump campaign officials Monday evening and they had declined an invitation to speak with President Biden. She said that she told the New York Post she didn't want to talk to Biden because her husband was a devout Republican and would have wanted that. So, buddy, her people literally saying that they heard from Trump. Obviously, they was there to support Trump. Like, it was a Trump rally. So they heard from Trump, them people. Ricky Smiley just told us that ain't happened. And then they also said that they ain't even want to talk with Biden. So how Ricky Smiley got the inside information that they actually did when the family themselves said they didn't. This is how they play on us with the media. They sent him that letter. That was nothing but a Christmas card that you get when you work for the company. Yeah. They letting them know, hey, boy, you know what to do. Shout us out. Say good things about us because we know the entertainers, y'all got all the power. All the black folks listen to y'all. This is how they play with us, bro. Man, just straight up lie to our face. But most people gonna take that at face value because they already hate the man Trump. We just being unbiased, reporting on all sides. You heard this man say that. I ain't putting words in Ricky Smiley's mouth, but it's just a quick little, like he said, do your homework. You can figure out it ain't true. But common sense tell you that ain't true. Why would Trump not have talked to these people and it was at his rally, but Biden would have? That don't make no sense, bro. Why offer that lie unless you're trying to paint them in a certain way? But to the mission at hand, though, real quick, right? We waiting on Dr. Dixon to get in here. I'm gonna drop this piece on you. So I want to show you why we can't just be going off of just because they look like us. Let's just say Kamala was black, right? So y'all ain't never known nobody that really is what they would call a black American, but ain't did wrong by their own people in positions of power. So let's go back to Tiffany Haynes. Some of y'all may remember her. She the Dalton mayor. And she been running them up. So we covered her a while back, but now it's been an update and it done got real serious in her case. And so I just want to know from y'all, should she be protected just because she so-called really is black in a position of power? Or should we go at her extra hard because you know the responsibility you got and you out the ball? So let's check it out.
A much-awaited report from former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. She's expected to release findings from her investigation into corruption claims surrounding Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. ABC5's Regina Waldrop is live in Dalton tonight with what's expected to be a pretty tense meeting. Regina?
Stephen, Lightfoot launched this probe in April. For the first time tonight, she's expected to talk about the findings, and this room filling up fast with residents who are here for it. Now, Lightfoot just made her way into the room here at the Dalton Park District. Right now, she is talking to residents who are here. The former mayor and federal prosecutor was hired by 4 village trustees to investigate Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard's spending habits. During her 3-year tenure, Henyard has faced numerous allegations of corruption, reckless spending, and retaliation. Henyard's also the focus of a number of lawsuits and federal probes. Lightfoot is said to have also looked into a controversial taxpayer-funded economic development trip to Las Vegas last year. Mayor Henyard was on that trip along with a handful of village representatives and her former assistant. That former assistant claimed while on that trip she was assaulted by a Dalton trustee and later fired. She's filed a civil lawsuit against Henyard and the trustee, accusing him of assault and Henyard of retaliation. The Department of Human Rights is now investigating. Now, we did reach out to the Henyard administration for a comment, but we have yet to hear back. This meeting gets underway at 6:30, and we'll have a live report coming up tonight after the Olympics. I'm live in Dalton. Regina Waldrop, NBC5 News.
Look forward to your report at 10. Thank you, Regina.
We have a lot more news to talk about tonight. Where did the money go in Dalton? That's the question former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was hired to answer. And for the first time tonight, she revealed some of her preliminary results of her investigation into questionable spending by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. NBC5's Regina Waldrop has been covering this story from the very start and is live tonight in Dalton with some of those startling findings. Regina?
Stephen, there were a lot of gasps from residents who were listening to this presentation, and I talked to several people after, and they said they knew things were bad, but they did not expect this. In Dalton tonight, a packed room for a long-awaited presentation on the village's financial crisis. Former Chicago Mayor and federal prosecutor Lori Lightfoot discussing her initial findings of an investigation into the spending habits of Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard and her administration. Some of the key findings: no annual report or audit since 2021. The general fund for day-to-day operations in the...
So I want to sit here real quick. So this is what part of the allegations, and I want to be clear because this is why this whole identity politics is real dangerous. Just because somebody, even if they are actually a Black American, because this mayor, she from the city that she's governing over right now. She actually from there, born and raised. So keep this in mind now. She in a position of power in her own city where she can make a real change. And these are the allegations brought by her trustees. This ain't just no random Joes. These are the people that work and supposed to govern what she's doing, right? So this is what they saying. No annual report since 2021. That's the year she started in 2020, bro. So general fund in the red, over $3 million. Police expenditures up 21%. They got over $6 million worth of checks that have been approved by the trustee board, but haven't been sent out to the contractors who did the work. All right. So check out some of these purchases and things she's been doing, bro.
The red with $3.65 million. Police department expenditures up 21%, with 2 officers paid more in overtime pay than regular pay. As of June 18th, 589 checks totaling more than $6 million approved but not sent to vendors. 6 different credit cards with receipts rarely provided, and purchases under investigation, including $40,000 in charges to Amazon.
You may hear a number of things in the coming days, but what I can assure you is the information that we have shared, that we're putting our names on, is drawn directly from the financial records of this village.
I knew we were broke, and the way she broke it down and just let the other residents hear what was really going on, because Tiffany Henyard always talk about fake news, and this is real.
Hilliard is also the focus of a number of federal probes and lawsuits. Lightfoot says her administration did not cooperate with this investigation. Now, we did reach out to the Hilliard administration for a statement, but have yet to hear back. As for next steps, well, Lightfoot said this investigation not over. There's still a lot of work to be done out here. Some other developments tonight. The board recently approved a change to the village's credit card policy, and the acting police chief was placed on leave Monday. They say he has now been terminated. There's a plan for a hiring freeze and layoffs, and also the board says the locks at Village Hall have been changed. That means elected officials out here can no longer use their Village Hall.
Now check this out. This lady who was in power, right, got it to where people are going to get laid off within the government of this city. They saying they over $6 million in the red in total. They got purchases from her for like Amazon for 40 grand. Got a police chief that made more in overtime than in regular pay. Right, she had a lot of stuff going on. For y'all who caught up on the beginning of the case when we was talking about the investigation, you know what it is. But long story short, the point here is she just one example of a lot of others, men and women of so-called Black Americans who get in these offices and they do the wrong thing. So we sit here telling you right now that somebody like Kamala Harris, who is much disputed about even if she with us or not, is on the same thing, bro. So why is we just supposed to vote for somebody because they so-called Black when they don't got no policies that's going to help our everyday life? At the end of the day, like we've been telling y'all, it's about being autonomous. We ain't telling you which party, who to vote for. We saying whoever you voting for, you need to have your research, bro, because these folks tell us you just need to vote for Kamala because you Black and she Black. Bro, that's crazy to me. You a fool if you just go for that. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. But you know, we got Anthony Dixon in the building, Dr. Anthony Dixon. Put some respect on his name. We got Mac ready, you know what I'm saying? So what we're going to do is we're going to run this commercial real quick, and we're going to get to it, man. We're going to talk about the Florida Negro War, the Black Seminole Project, and we got some a treat for y'all, bro. So go in the commercial break, and we'll be right back at it. Hold on, man. Hold on.
Do.
Yeah, let me bring Mac up, y'all. Hold on. Mac, what's up, bro?
What they do?
Peace to you.
How you doing? Yeah, Monica, man. How's everybody?
Yeah. Shout out to him. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up Dr. Dixon. Whoa, peace to you, bro.
Hey, good evening, brothers. Good evening.
How you doing, Dr. Dixon?
I am good, brother. I'm good, brother. Wow.
Thank you for joining us, man, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
Man, I had looked into you, bro. I saw you went to Peach County.
Yes, sir.
So I live right by outside of Macon right now. So I live in a little town called Byron, right down the road from Folk Valley. Yeah.
Why are you in Byron, brother?
So my wife found they from East Macon. So I just bought a little crib out here. You know, I was in the military out here before. That's how I know about the area.
Okay, because you know Byron is our white flight area.
Oh, it's different now. I don't know when the last time you came through here, but
I'm always there. Always keep in touch, brother. Byron is
That's how it was when I was here the first time.
It's a struggle in Byron right now. It's
Yeah.
a real struggle in Byron right now, brother. There's just a lot of things that are going on in Byron that we have to keep our eye on.
Mm-hmm.
So I trust that you will stay vigilant there as well.
Oh yeah.
In terms of keeping your ear to the streets and knowing
Definitely.
what's actually going on. Because they have tried over the last couple of years some real shenanigans in terms of trying to suffocate Fort Valley, trying to suffocate my hometown.
That's definitely happening. Yeah.
And I'm gonna give you a quick history because you know I love what I do.
Yeah, this is what we own. Go ahead.
Actually, right, I-75 was supposed to go through Fort Valley.
So that would have been major.
But the whites in Fort Valley did not want the HBCU, Fort Valley State, to get too large. And they figured I-75 would create a direct pipeline to Atlanta, and Fort Valley State would become too large. So they actually went to the U.S. government, and the engineers actually had to go back and redraw and re-engineer I-75 so that it goes through Byron and Perry and not Fort Valley, because they didn't want Fort Valley State to get too large.
And you might be onto something now, because
you
know they built the Amazon plant right off of Byron, off the same 75 you talking about. And that would have been major to have that in Fort Valley versus so because Fort Valley ain't doing too good right now.
No, my hometown is definitely in a fight. You know?
That's a fact.
It's in a dog fight.
A lot of these places right now seem to be going
Similar
through a lot
situation.
of this stuff, so it's not like
it ain't by coincidence.
It's not a coincidence, you know what I mean?
No, not at all. Not at all, brothers. Now I want to say one more thing. I was listening to you when I was sitting backstage about Harris and us not just voting for people because they are black. Right? And I understand that completely. But here's something I want black people to understand as well. As we're moving forward, right? And there are becoming more minorities in this country than whites. Most of, and the vast majority of the minorities, just not blacks, just not those, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-South Americans, or whoever blacks that migrate into the United States, but Hispanic, Latino as well. The vast majority are choosing the Democratic Party, right? And so I'm telling you all, brothers, in a few years, we're not talking about 30, 40 years. I'm suspecting 20 or less. What we're going to see is that a number of whites are going to leave the Democratic Party and join the Republican Party, because they will begin to lose their control over the Democratic Party. And our party system will be split such that the Democratic Party will be the party of minorities, and Republican Party will be the party of whites. And this is something that we need to be prepared for. So I understand that we are disgruntled with the Democratic Party, and we have every right to be disgruntled with them. But on the same token, we are on the cusp of getting some real things done when minorities take over the Democratic Party, which will happen. There's no doubt in my mind, it will happen. And when it does happen, what we're also going to see is more progressive ideologies becoming the main theories of the Democratic Party. And so we have to be mindful when we do look at, the totality of it. We have to, on the local and state and local, we have to really look at the individuals and who's going to do best. But when we look at the totality of the government issues and the way the country is moving as a whole, we have to make a decision in a few years. Are we going to stay strong with the Democratic Party as these changes start to take place? And if we do start seeing more Blacks and Hispanics / Latinos rising in power, becoming the majority leader and things of that nature, and being the chairman of more of these committees, then we have to recognize that fact that yes, at some point, we are going to witness whites leaving the Democratic Party. And so at that point, we will probably have our strongest political action that we'll ever have in terms of party lines.
I'll say this to you.
Yeah,
it's going to correlate into our conversation for today. So this is why the autonomous party, we like to have, we want an autonomous viewpoint. We don't come over here, as you can see, people that know us would know we have an opposing view to that for only one major reason. Just because somebody minority does not mean that they have our best interests at heart, because their minority story may be completely different from me and yours. So they may have a different viewpoint on what type of policies and what land is important to them. Getting to these Seminoles, the people who experience this story would have a different struggle than somebody who was an Asian on the West Coast. Their story is completely different. The laws that matter to them is completely different.
I totally agree. Now, the thing about it is, though, when we look at history, right? When we look at history, because we have to use history to understand the trends that's coming forward, right?
It's the map.
When we look at history, though, whites themselves began to close ranks. Whites themselves began to distance themselves and do things to ensure that they remain the dominant culture and that they continue to have those advantages of being the dominant culture. And so when things begin to change where they don't have as much leverage as they used to have by the sheer numbers, you're going to see them start pushing different policies. And see, those policies are going to be reflected across the board. It won't just be policies that affect African Americans. Hispanics, Latinos, and even Asians are going to see these policies. And then at that point, right? At that point, we then have that choice to make, right? Whether or not that Black person who does have that different background and this, that, and the other, are they still affected negatively by those policies that are being pushed by whites?
Hey, you came right on time.
It will come, in my opinion, whether we have these differences, because Afro-Caribbeans have a very different perspective sometimes than African Americans.
Correct.
But just like with the Seminoles, when we look at the Seminole Nation, a lot of it came together because it was the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You see, so I think whites themselves will begin to try to enforce and try to ensure that they continue to have that cultural dominancy and those advantages, such that those Blacks, those Asians, those other minorities will then push back on certain policies. And it'll be policies that may not directly affect us, but the pushback will still be the same. And that pushback is what's going to be at some point a unification.
This is what I would like to do. I would like to, in the future, this
Mm-hmm.
would be perfect for us to have. Basically, we could have a conversation, if you're willing, about informing the people, right? So
Okay.
you seem to be leaning toward a democratic, more of a view, and I'm more opposing. But I think that you're very informed, and it's a conversation we can have in front of the people, because it's a lot of people who feel like what you feel.
See,
You know what I'm saying?
but I think you're opposed to the Democrats as they are now.
Oh no, I'm opposed in all shapes, form, even from the creation of it. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
when they created the government, when you look at the original documents, they spoke out against a two-party system. They said
Republic,
a
for what you
two-party
said.
system
Right.
was going to split and doom the country. They said that.
Right.
But see, when Thomas Jefferson went after the Federalists,
right,
and he took the anti-federalist policies and all that quote-unquote states' rights and all of that.
Correct.
He began to set the country rather on that path of the two-party system.
Correct.
Because he vehemently went after one party.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to, when he got in office, he just started reversing anything, whether it looked good or bad, anything that looked like it was a Federalist part. It was a Federalist project or Federalist, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry. Federalist law.
Mm-hmm.
So when he did that, he began to set us on that path. And so if we look at, right, trying to get off of that path of a two-party system, right, what it's going to do is it is going to open up the ability, right, and we don't know which way it will go, but it's going to open up the ability in which people are going to be split, right? Right now, you have the progressives who have threatened.
I would say it's pretty split now.
It's split right now.
But
it's split like hell.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying is splitting, while on the same token, even Republicans, when they even had their chance, had their inklings of a split when the Tea Party began to arise, right? They were able to get all back on the same page, and the ultra-conservative Republicans sat down with those quote-unquote normalized Republicans, and they got back on the same page because they all have that basic agenda that they are going to do whatever it takes to continue to have the advantages that they have by being white. So what we have to be careful of is our continued split between progressives and quote unquote normal or moderate Democrats, splitting us, while Republicans, because whites will all agree, they can argue all if they want to, but when it comes down to cultural dominancy and the advantages that they have, they still all agree at some point. And I'm gonna give you a very good example of that, and I'll leave it alone and let you talk, brother. When Obama won, right, his second election, right, he is probably the most outstanding thing that we should have recognized as African Americans and minorities. The first thing is that with both victories, he never won not one white category. He just won enough votes in each white category to go along with the vast majority black vote and the majority Hispanic/Latino vote. Now, here's the real kicker, right? When he ran against that second run against Mitt Romney, right? Mitt Romney got on TV and he told the gay community that he would not support same-sex marriage. He said he will not support it, plain and simple, right?
Right.
That was their number one agenda, right? At the time, that was their number one agenda now. Do you know that the majority of gay whites still voted for Romney? Obama didn't win that category neither. So what that tells us is no matter what opposition they may have, there is always a point where whites are going to come together because they all want to remain the dominant culture and continue to have those advantages as such.
What you got on it, Matt?
Well, just on the last couple Sundays, we've been doing, black delineation. And funny enough, I know because of what we know over here at the party that, as Dr. Dixon mentioned, that he mentioned minorities, but then he also mentioned the African American. Yeah. And obviously dealing with the time frame of Obama at that time, and dealing with the voting situation, of course, he's dealing with the Oriental situation and the Negro situation at this time. And now the Oriental is becoming the Asian American, and the Negro is now being technically classified as the African American. So now within that context, the delineation part seems to be confusing for people because of how we know that from the time frame of before the word African was a prefixed situation, the minority class was free people of color. So the people in the free people of color category, free, not enslaved folk, but free people of color from 1790, that go all the way into this time frame of heritage going into 1865, later on going into 1965 and the civil rights era. Those Negroes now are specifically being delineated as an African American within the context of what Obama did, Jesse Jackson did, etc. We can go back, but not everybody as free people of color at that time even agreed with those terms of calling themselves that. And I think that's became a big issue, being that today the minority class, which is not really technically meaning that you're the minority as far as numbers, but when we get together as the minority group of people that are migrating into America, the Caribbean, Spanish and Latin, and other people from the diaspora that are coming into America that would fit into being labeled colored folk, as that BIPOC thing we just read on Sunday, it can get, the lines can get crossed to who we really trying to address, going back to what Obama did when he was in office. And we didn't get nothing out of, besides being termed African Americans. That group of people, lineage-wise, have not acted. That's why they're talking about reparations and all this stuff in current day time, because if Obama would have did it, then the person that was labeled the African American from the term Negro attributed to who it is, they wouldn't be going through what they're going through right now. Just like how we're about to talk about the Black Seminoles. You know what I'm saying?
Well, can I ask both of you brothers a question? Even if we do get into a full discussion on the terminology, right? Black, Negro, colored, right? Because we've all gone through, we witness history, we've gone through those periods, right?
Right.
There was a time where if you call somebody black, they were ready to fight,
Correct.
right? So we've gone through that terminology change constantly. But here's my question to you. I think at this point, right, the real question comes down to whether or not a person considers themselves black first and American second, or whatever you want to call yourself, colored, Negro, what, it doesn't matter. Do you think of yourself as black first, or a melanated person first and American second, or American first and black second? See, it became obvious that Obama was American first and black second. And when you talk to a lot of black people, you can start understanding, okay, this person thinks American first, black second. You know, and I'm completely the opposite. I tell people, even when I watched the Olympics, if I saw 3 people there, it was, I don't care if it was an Asian person, European person, and a black person. And that black person was from Jamaica. I don't care if that Caucasian person was American. I'm going for that Jamaican because I am black first, period.
See, I'm the opposite. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Okay, see, that's what I'm saying. So are you thinking American first and then black second?
Yeah. And I'll tell you.
Okay, well, here's the question then. Here's the question.
What you got?
If you are thinking American first and black second, what American cultural identity are we talking about? Because white America has enshrouded their cultural identity into the American fabric and the overall American culture to the point where it dominates. So when you begin to think American first, right, are you culturally still black first, or are you talking about the overall American culture, which still is dominated by
us,
white Anglo-Saxon Protestant theory ideas and everything?
So this is where I would disagree. The reason why I say I'm American first.
I'm not trying to disagree. I'm asking.
Oh yeah, the conversation.
No,
yeah,
I'm saying that, and it's funny because of obviously we have conversation with you, Dr. Dixon, dealing with obviously the particular book of the Negro Wars. So obviously we are culturally understanding that the term Negro has been applied to our people. See what I'm saying?
Right.
Now, and understanding that this term Negro has been applied to our people, we're the only ones culturally that obviously have, you hear a lot of people speak on that are tied to this term Negro or the American Negro, showing they have different indigenous backgrounds in their mixture. You know what I'm saying? They're tied to the term free people of color in different areas and regions prior to even the forming of United States of America, based off of certain treaties and certain things. The Negro that we're speaking about is that Obama later now, and even Jesse, as we spoke, and I can go back to 18th century with the term African being presented, but at the same time, again, free people of color. We were the last group of people who were, that Obama had to do that particularly for. He didn't do that for Jamaicans. We just got through saying how in the Olympics, Haiti, 19th century, there already was a nation of people going to the Olympics. We were called Negroes from out of America still. We were still going through Jim Crow in America. Haitians were not going through that. The ones that came after the 1970s, because of what our group of people, free people of color, and the Negro culturally, lawfully, that went through things in America prior to the end of what we call the civil rights era. We have something that we share together with a lot of different things that's tied to the American culture and we built America, not Anglo-Saxons. And that's a fact. That's not even my opinion, actually. So,
right. You know. I totally agree with that, but I'm just talking from I'm asking this question rather from a cultural standpoint. So again, when you say that you are American first, right? What are we talking about? U.S. citizen American first? Are we talking a person who is an ancestor of the indigenous people that were here in the Americas before?
Correct.
They were in America. I figured before it was a country. You know what I mean?
I figured that, but that's what I'm saying to you is that American that you're saying, right? And I totally agree. That American still has more cultural ties and historical experiences to Afro-Brazilians, Afro-Caribbeans, blacks in England, those on the continent of Africa. And so with those historical and cultural ties, for me, that makes me associate with you, whether you call yourself an American or not, that makes me associate with you first, and not the idea and principles that have been enshrouded by larger American society. See, I'm talking culture. I'm not talking about
so let me explain.
I'm talking about the culture and the experience.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. So basically what I'm saying is that our experience for those same people you label, let's just say a black European and an indigenous person already in America who came over here and let's say started messing around in the 1500s in North America. So the country, the citizenship that came later, I'm not talking about that part. Right. Even though it's still called America too, is named after the continent, which is all we can really go by, because even a lot of these Indian tribes, it's not the original name. So let's just say America, because we know our people was here before this ruling class took over. So I agree with you as far as the identity of being a citizen. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'm America first because I care about what happens here, because our culture is the American culture. They got it from us. The system got it from us. From the blend of nations that happen to be in this melting pot called America is what built the whole American experience. So this is why I always identify with America first. Okay, Black was made up later.
That's simply what I was asking you, that if a Afro-Trinidadian were in whatever,
I wouldn't call them Afro though.
I just call them a Trinidadian.
Just a Trinidadian.
Yeah. See, I'm not talking about any of the tertiary things dealing with names. I'm calling them Trinidadian, and a person who is melanated from Trinidad.
Gotcha.
Right? What I'm saying is that person, if you and that person were in whatever situation, whether it was a political situation or you all were in the bank together, or you were simply watching that person, right? That person on TV in a tennis match against a white American, who would you identify with and feel closer ties to is the question.
So, okay, so check this out. I'm gonna say the white boy. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm from Louisiana, so let me preface this. I'm from Louisiana, okay? I'm not somebody who grew up in Minnesota, or I've been around black people, love black, so-called black people, because the term black is not our real historical identity. But I get what you're saying. But just because you look like me, okay, I'll make it a better example. Let's say me and you, we hoop. We playing basketball. We get to go on Team USA, okay? So we got some white boys on the team with us too. Are we not going to pass them the ball because they white and they're on the same team? Like, you see what I'm saying? That don't make...
No, we don't have a choice at that point. We don't have a choice. What I'm saying to you is, what I'm asking you is, and you really already answered it. You're saying you feel closer to that white American than that Trinidadian.
Negative.
Right?
I'm saying I would ride, if you from America, right? And this is a competition between two different countries. This white boy ain't got to be from no ruling class or did no shit to nobody. He just a white man from America, and I rep America. We on the same game, right? I'm a ride for you. So that's not because I look at him. But that goes back
to what I was asking you all. Was it the association of the larger ideology of American? You see?
Well,
and that's that's my whole point. That's all I'm saying. And that's where we differ. You see, because for me, the diaspora is larger.
And that always tied to Africa. That's why I don't like the diaspora.
Yeah, I'm not going to get caught up in the diaspora because of the fact
that... But diaspora, wait a minute. Diaspora means, wait a minute now. Diaspora means fragmented, right? So we're talking about people who, whether they originated out of America or not, they ended up in different places, or whether they were originally there or not. They are still in these different places.
Understood.
Now, they have, right? And what I'm saying is because that person, right? That person in Trinidad, right? That person from Trinidad has more cultural ties to me and more historical experiences than me to me, I feel, than that white American.
See, I got a lot.
See,
I
it may
lie to
be
you. I've been to a
Trinidad may
few
have
countries
had a
now.
different type because they went through colonialization, enslavement, and then colonialization and everything else. But the simple fact, you see, is that I also recognize, right? I also recognize, and you all have to understand this. This is the truth now. I also recognize, though, as I was mentioning to you earlier when we were talking about the political parties, see, that is the difference between us and whites. You see, whites will drop all of that and they will unify. That's why they stopped that Italian neighborhood, the Irish neighborhood, the Italian neighborhood. They started moving away from that because they wanted to ensure their unity. You see? And that's the whole thing about it. That is the difference that you would associate with that white American because of America, whereas a white person has a very good chance that they're going to unify with a white person regardless because they are white.
See, again, you know what's crazy is that I know
And this
you
is
like to
why
give
they
them
are
that
more
power of
unified than
lumping.
us.
Well, they had to unify. They had to
Out of
unify to
survival.
make their numbers out of survival reasons, just like a lot of other people. But they got their backgrounds and ethnicities and their difference and their culture, and they don't just white people just don't party with each other. They could put those things aside, just like how Trinidadian and the Jamaican and the Haitian might have obviously certain things tied to being from the Caribbean, called Afro in the Caribbean. But guess what? In a person that's a Haitian is a Haitian. He's not an Afro-Haitian. He's a Haitian. A person that's Jamaican is a Jamaican. He's not a black Jamaican. He's a Jamaican. You know what I'm saying? We have our issues here in America because we have been put into a delineation of using a prefix term African or black in front of the word American because of the fact that through what we know we went through, being labeled Negro, the one drop rule, Jim Crow, and all the black codes and etc. else, that we have been kind of disenfranchised from being in the pure American state that technically we're supposed to be in, being that our ancestors are tied to the first people that migrated to this land and the people that is obviously First Nation people of this land. We were here in the beginning and we're still here now. Could you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm with you. I got you.
Okay. I want to get to the Black Seminole part because time flies,
Yeah,
Dr. Dixon.
I'm sorry,
and I know.
we-
No,
Nah, it's a good
I
conversation
know
though.
brothers.
We're gonna have to come back.
Yeah.
I can talk with you all on every level. I love what I do. By all
That's
means,
what's
let's
up.
talk about the Black Seminoles.
Yeah, so you have obviously that we've had you on here before. Shout out to Zarian Hadley, the Black Seminole Project that you guys got going on. If you don't
shout
mind,
out
before
to
we
him.
start asking questions and stuff like that, dealing with the book, you want to give, just in case anybody that might not have been here before and met you, y'all might have to go back and watch anything you see on our channel dealing with the Black Seminole Project. But obviously, Dr. Dixon is the author of the Negro Wars, and you've covered extensively dealing with the Black Seminole Project and these people. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I appreciate you. Obviously, you let people a little bit know about what made you want to write this book as the author of the Negro Wars. And obviously, people can go back later on. Again, shout out to the Zarian Hadley. Monte, you can show the website real quick while he talks about it real quick. You don't mind?
Yeah, I got you.
Just so everybody get a reference point of the website.
I just posted in the chat too, so y'all can
go ahead, Dr. Dixon.
read to it.
Okay. when I started my graduate studies, when I started with my master's, I began to look at resistance, right? Overall resistance to enslavement, resistance to oppression. And so I was beginning to look at all different types of different forms of resistance. And I kind of gravitated, and I always really did, but I began to gravitate toward the enslavement and Reconstruction period, right? And so I started looking at just all different types of resistance. I looked at the 3 different types of revolts. I looked at the different types of resistance, whether it was what they call insolence, which was normally given to women. That was the rolling of the eyes, sucking of the teeth, spitting in the food, urinating in the food, things of that nature, which they called insolence. And so I came across this remarkable story of basically the first Underground Railroad, right? And I understood that because these were Black people or melanated people doing this all on their own, that they didn't get the accolades and they didn't get written in the annals of history the way they should have. And then as I continued to dig and I followed their story, I then saw the cultural development into the Seminole community and into this building of the Seminole Nation. And then ultimately I got to the Second Seminole War and found out that there were 3 distinct parts where the Blacks were actually the primary targets. And that even the general who was over the U.S. military during the Second Seminole War writes back to the Secretary of War and to the president and says, hey, this is not an Indian war. This is a Negro war. And so when I moved on and I went to my my PhD program, I went from FAMU to IU to Indiana University. I started again looking at all different types of resistance again and looking at the diaspora as a whole. And so there were two different historical significant things that really pulled on me. On the one, it was still the Black Seminoles and this first Underground Railroad and this Negro War, which I was starting to believe was a very, very large mass rebellion. And then I was also looking at the time, I was also looking at the civil rights movement, specifically King and X, and the ideologies of nonviolence and the use of violence, and comparing that with the ending of apartheid and looking at Mandela and Stephen Biko and their idea, of course, of nonviolence and the usage of violence, and comparing that as to why we decided here in the United States to stay on the nonviolent course throughout much of the, basically throughout the civil rights movement, whereas even Nelson Mandela began to agree with Stephen Biko and he began to accept modes of violence, not modes of violence against people, but against the power structure. So
Right.
they began to blow up power plants and they began to blow up radio stations because the radio stations were what the whites were using to galvanize themselves to go and suppress any movement. So to keep them from being able to just suppress each and every movement with ease, Mandela and Biko got together and agreed that those radio stations needed to go, you know? And so it started boiling down to, you know, which one was I really going to go with in terms of doing the lengthy study and the dissertation. And so I started, there was, of course, the theoretical and the practical. The practical was the civil rights versus apartheid comparison was going to take a lot longer. But also, when I really started looking at the Black Seminoles and I started looking at this thing, I understood that yes, this was indeed an enslaved rebellion, and it was the largest and most successful. And here's the kicker that did it for me, brothers. When I started really doing the research, I did, of course, some of the research in the beginning, the research in my master's, but when I got to the PhD and I began to have to know every article and every book written about the topic, I realized that the Second Seminole War had been written from every single perspective but the Black perspective. Even though it was called a Negro War, even though we have the documents that prove that 3 distinct times they were far more concerned with the Blacks than they were with the Native American counterparts. And so when I got to defend it, the proposal, when they were asked, they specifically asked me, brothers, they asked, what is it that I expected to uncover that hasn't been written about this war, right? And I said, probably nothing. And they all, of course, sat up and was like, nothing. They were ready to, you know, toss that right in the trash and send me back to the drawing board. I said, the reason that I'm doing this is exactly what you just said. I said, there's a book on the Alabama volunteers. There's even a book on the Tennessee volunteers. There are at least 3 books on the military campaigns. There's one that's used by the Virginia Military Institute in their curriculum today, even today, years later. I was like, but no one has looked at this war particularly and specifically from the Black perspective, even though it was called a Negro War. And of course, they said, by all means, go ahead. And so it then became, you know, the first step, right, in what I call the 3 steps for diaspora or Pan-African studies, right, which is providing a voice to the voiceless, right? This is an American story. This is American history. You have left one of the main parts of the longest, deadliest, costliest, quote unquote, Indian war fought in the United States. Not Geronimo, not Sitting Bull, not Chief Joseph, but Osceola and these Blacks who were the primary fighters.
The Panther Clan.
And so,
that's the loose.
Yes, sir. You want to ask your question now? You want me to?
No, I was just ad-libbing when you said
he
it.
added to it.
I was just adding to it. You know, go ahead though. I'm letting you walk on.
Oh, okay. And so
shout it out.
And so at that point, right, providing the voice to the voiceless was the first step, right? Now, the second step, and what I say the second wave or whatever you like to call it, in these studies, in the diaspora studies, is making the cultural ties, right? Where we see that these blacks who had Native American heritage, who intermingled with Native Americans, you had these blacks, right, who were living in separate villages, creating their own existence. And then you had these blacks who were constantly running away, trying to join them to live free and fight for their freedom. And so through those three, we see cultural contacts. We also see cultural ties. And from those three groups also, we see a larger context of cultural ties. And I'll give you a quick example on that. And let me know if I'm going too far, because I love what I do.
No, go ahead.
I got an email, right, from no, it was just a text message, I think, from a good friend of mine, message from a good friend of mine. We've been friends for ever since undergrad, the early 90s, right? And he said, you know, I looked at you, I saw your stuff on social media, I looked at the website. He was like, you know, I never told you this, my friend. He was like, but this is actually how my family got to Florida. He was like, my great grandfather, I think it was four, great one of those, was enslaved in Alabama during the Civil War. He was like, but by that time, because of all of the Seminole Wars and the history of the first Underground Railroad to Florida, it was a well-known fact that if you can get to Florida, you can get in the wilderness and you can live free and hide out. And so he said that's exactly what his ancestor did. He left, he absconded, came into Florida, hid out through the entire Civil War. Then when the Civil War was over, he went back to Alabama, got his family, and brought them back to Florida, and they've been in the Gainesville area ever since. You see, so it made cultural ties, even if you were not directly linked to Native Americans or the Black Seminoles. There were cultural ties that different blacks in America can have to this story and understanding it. And so then the third phase, that's the best word to use, the third phase of the African of the studies is, how do we take that information, right? And we use that information to solve issues that we're dealing with today. And so the Black Seminole Project, the documentary and the film, is going to look at that by dealing with the primary issue within melanated people, Black, Negro, whatever you want to call it, and that is our lack of unity. And this story demonstrates how those three groups of people were able to unify and come together and overcome what would anyone else would have deemed insurmountable odds. And so it shows us clearly what we can do if we unify. And when people leave the
Oh, we back. You can hear us? Oh, there you go.
To see and understand that sense of unity, because it will be an underlining theme throughout the entire movie. When they watch the documentary, and they hear the story, but then they hear the voices of Black Seminoles today, they're going to understand that as well. And so we don't do historical studies, historical research, historical writings, if it cannot be used and translated to a point where it becomes useful in dealing with issues that we have today. And so that's the point of the project.
Okay.
To provide a voice to the voiceless that this is an American story, to demonstrate the cultural ties that people can have to this story, and then what is it about this story we need to apply in what we're trying to get done today.
Well, that's the whole point of us having you come on here and understand for
So
people to
that's
ask
pretty
any
much
questions.
in a
Hey, Dr. Dixon, can you hear
what
us?
the Black Seminole Project
I don't think you can hear us, bro.
Again, it's a documentary, Freedom Seekers, Black Seminoles of the Past and Present, and it is a full feature-length film, Ghost in the Grass, which, as you hopefully people saw that through the PowerPoint there that you put up from our website. Louis Gossett Jr. was a producer. We were going to be his final project, and we are still going to be his final project, because this project is going to get done and is going to be in some cases in memory of him, because he believed in this story. He knew that this was an important story, and actually he was familiar with the story. And the first time I talked to him, we ended up talking for about an hour and a half because he was so familiar with the story. And so,
can you hear us, Dr. Dixon?
We are going to pay homage to Louis Gossett for laying the groundwork. I said, are we having problems hearing me?
Yeah, we can't hear you. You can't hear us.
You can't hear us?
I can't hear you all. You all can't hear me?
We hear you though. We hear you.
Hear us.
Oh, okay. The thing about it is,
Mac, hit him, bro. Hit him.
Back to Louis Gossett. I don't know if you know it or not, but he was in this this remake of The Color Purple, right?
Yeah.
And that was going to be his last acting piece or film. And then he was going to produce this film, and he is still a producer for this film, and it being his last production that he did. And I'll end there if we got any questions and all that good stuff, brother.
Damn. Hey, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, I can't hear anyone.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Can you all hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
We hear you.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
But
I can't
everybody
hear you
in the
all,
chat.
though.
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah, we all hear you.
I don't know. That's obviously a technical problem right there. So, I don't know. The fact that you can't hear us is crazy right now. I don't know.
Can you put the questions?
Right now. I ain't gonna lie.
Hold on.
Can you put the questions in the chat then, and I can answer
maybe
them
we
that
could
way.
do that. Anybody
y'all
have
put
any
your questions in the chat
about the Black Seminole Project or dealing with the book, The Negro Wars? Hey, Monte, can you pull up the other source real quick that I wanted to show? I guess.
Yep.
Trying to work and navigate through this. You think you can't hear us, Dr. Dixon, can you? Let me text him. No,
Yeah,
I'm just
hit him,
saying
bro.
it's
Hit him,
crazy
bro.
because you know.
Somebody had blanked out on his end earlier. That may have took his audio.
Yeah, when he paused for that second, you think after
Yeah.
that pause, the
I think
glitch,
after that
that's
he
when
can
it
hear
happened.
us. Hold on, y'all. You see what we dealing with. It's live with it. Yeah, door of L. Tell him Matt probably try to go out, come back in.
Yeah, you're gonna have to I'm telling him right now, go out and come
Peace,
back
peace,
in.
peace. You
Okay,
hear us?
now I can hear you. I don't know
There we
what
go.
happened, but
All
I can
right.
hear
I
you.
Okay,
don't know.
okay.
Yeah, we good.
Woo.
Back at it, man.
Interesting. All right. It'd be like that sometimes though. Hey, so what I really wanted to, I was posing the question about, and I wanted to share this. I know we shared it before. So anybody that want to kind of go to the museum, if they ever come down to Florida, we've had to point this out because they always try to say that Seminole is just mean, a runaway. But technically, this word on here, yacht Seminole. You can slide down a little bit, Monte, so people can see. I want to show them. They go to the
Yeah.
museum.
Hold on. Let me post this link
You'll
here.
see. Yeah, they put it in the chat for the folk.
Yeah. Make it bigger real quick.
Yeah. Make it bigger for the folk. We can go down just a little bit. I always got, always want to show people the
Tell me when to
fact
stop.
of what this word, what they say the word means. Hold on, I'm gonna find it real quick. Matter of fact, you can make that whole thing bigger right there. Matter of fact, it's right there in the first paragraph. In that first paragraph right there. Yep.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
When you go to the museum, you see, you see it. All right, the Seminole people are descendants of the Muskegon-speaking peoples, and obviously, Negroes, or like some people like to say, or Africans, as they would like to say, were living amongst Muskogee people way before the term Seminole became a Confederate term. But as it says, the valley of the Apalachicola and the Chattahoochee rivers in the 1700s, pressured by white settlement in South Carolina and Georgia, some chose to migrate south to Florida, where the Spanish colonial government welcomed them as trading partners. Having been divided by geographia and circumstance from their ancestors by the mid 1700s, the Indians of Florida came to be called Cimarrones, by the Spanish meaning wild ones. They thought of themselves as Yacht Seminole, or free people. As a series of conflicts, the War of 1812, the Creek Wars, and the Seminole Wars, and treaties that disrupted the Seminole way of life ultimately resulted in the forcible removal of most Indians from Florida. A core band of Seminoles, however, refused to surrender. Approximately 300 to 700 survived, remained in Florida, revitalizing their cultural identity, drawing strength from their matriarchal clans, and adapting their cultural arts where they were to their survival as a people and a sovereign nation. Between the end of the Third Seminole War in 1858 and the federal recognition as the Seminole tribe in Florida in 1957, the Seminole kept ancient traditions alive deep in the lands of the Everglades and Cypress Swamp. Now, I just wanted to read that to Dr. Dixon. How's that sound from what you've done your research on, from that paragraph or two I read?
It is, to be honest with you, it's not 100% accurate.
Okay.
It is not 100% accurate. We do know in those Spanish documents, when they talk about the word Cimarron, that the Spanish were not referring to the Native Americans, but they were referring to those black factions and counterparts within the groups of people.
Yes.
And the term, they kind of softened the term up, because I've heard it and seen documentation, and of course that's America. That's human nature, right? You got a term, and then some people have a negative connotation with that term, right? And so It says wild and unruly, but it was in documents also as wild, unruly beast, and that they were calling the melanated people or the blacks beast, wild, unruly beast, and so it kind of gives the impression that the Spanish were talking about them in general when they really weren't. Originally, they were talking about the blacks. They weren't talking about the Native Americans, and it developed to encapsulate all of them. When
All
the
of them.
word began to go from Semolina to Seminole,
I got a question.
Semolina, Seminole. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How would they have been able to differentiate what they were saying was the Native Americans in Florida versus who you're saying to be the blacks?
Well, now here is something that you and I could discuss, but when we look at Terrence Weeks' research, right, what they discovered.
Damn, he went out.
Mac, you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. He went out.
Damn. Dr. Dixon, you can hear us? He blanked out all the way. Hey, in the chat, y'all can hear us? Put a 1 in the chat. Y'all can still hear us. Make sure the stream ain't it's a little delay on this. Let's see what they say. I just seen it. I think we still connected.
Okay, they say they hear us though.
Oh yeah, we straight there. Yeah, so we're gonna give them a second. We got a nice crowd. Shout out to everybody who came to tune in. Y'all been showing a lot of love, man. We're gonna get back to it. You know how it is sometimes when you're live, you know, we can't do nothing about it. Ain't no editing this part out. So we're gonna make it do what it do. But for those of y'all who've been tracking, hold on, he just sent a message in the back. Hold on.
Uh-huh. Have a little patience with us, man. We try to do these live interviews live, so you know that's what it be like sometimes.
Yeah. Hopefully, and if y'all got some questions, put them in the chat.
Yeah, if y'all got questions, you definitely should throw them in the chat. You heard me? About what Dr. Dixon is speaking on. Put your thoughts even so we can highlight them and maybe he can answer them as well. Feedback. Give us some feedback.
We working on it, y'all.
Yeah, while we waiting on him to come back in, this word Cimarron. This word Cimarron, and we actually touched on it before because of what we know about with DeSoto and other explorers that came into North America in the early 1500s. And basically their explorations, and they documented, like you said, the Spanish conquest part of what they documented in their explorations. The people of the caste system of the Spanish and the Portuguese are using terms like Moreno or Marano. So obviously with the influence of the Spanish and the ones that are not, basically allying with the ones that they're being underneath. Term Cimarron comes into play.
We back.
Or maroon. Can you hear us, Dr. Dixon?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good to go.
All right. I don't know why I'm having a little technical difficulty here.
It happen all the time. We live with it.
Okay.
It is what it is. No pressure.
I know that's right. We keep it moving, brother.
We're gonna keep it moving. Yeah. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to you, Jesse. But so what we was leaving off on was about a lot of times in these different articles, because I like what you said a few statements ago where you was like, everybody's voice was heard in this area except for the people labeled black, right? So my question is, they always are differentiating between the Native Americans there and what they're saying is black. So my question was, how are they able to determine who's who between the Native Americans and the blacks?
Okay, let me. There are two things. first one I was talking before I went out, Terrence Wheat archaeological evidence said that there are two, the way that they could sometimes, and they were able to differentiate even the maroon villages was through the pottery, and that the triangular shaped punctuates were used in the more maroon villages than the quote unquote Native American villages. And that some of those triangular punctuates are indicative to, I want to say the Crew people, and I cannot say specifically which group, but he did attribute it to some form of African pottery. Now, the other was there was a researcher, Boyd, in his article. Ooh, y'all got me digging. And yes, in his article, there was a traveler, right? He was basically a trader.
Okay, you know from where?
Was, in Florida. He was a trader in Florida during the 1800s.
Okay.
And he began to write his travels down, and he would of course keep notes of trading because he, he had commodities he was trying to sell and all of this.
Right.
Well, he does a description, right, where he describes where he saw ritual dances, and he made a distinction between what he called Native Americans and he called the Negroes, or the what did he call them? The darkies, right? And he called the Native American dances, ritualistic, cultural, and then he called the melanated people's dances, he called it vulgar.
Okay.
And so those types of differentiations, right, would continuously be used to identify people of melanated people, right?
Right.
That anything that we did, even if it was indigenous American, anything we did was considered derogatory, vulgar, negative, anything else. They've been doing this for a very long time.
So I got a follow-up question for you.
And I can actually give you one of the earliest psychologies that was written actually in England.
And we talking 1800s, right?
Yeah, we're talking 1800s, but that ideology and why they began to do that, right? It comes from Europe in basically the late 1300s into mainly the 1400s, where they were beginning to define their quote unquote Christianity. And when they were beginning to define their Christianity, they began to attribute God with everything being light and white and bright. And so when they came across, large numbers of melanated people, right, they began to say and assume that this must be the devil's people. If the light and the white are God's people, these are the devil's people. And that is where the basis out of Europe comes from, all of these negative connotations on melanated people.
I think that with this thing that obviously on that side of what they're documenting is saying derogatory things and everything like that. But are you familiar, obviously, with the fact that going into 1751, which will be the 18th century, that when Benjamin Franklin makes his observation, he's saying there's a lot of people coming in that are considered swarthy, and at this point, they're very Benjamin Franklin is saying that the Anglo-Saxon, which is tied to this whiteness and this European, everything you're saying, I agree with. They're having this view. Benjamin Franklin is obviously saying that based off of him seeing what it was, and, people that's migrating into the colonies at that time. And this is obviously prior to the tribe or confederacy called Seminole, being that this is 1751. It would still be Muskogee, technically, at this time. Creek,
Right.
as some people like to say. So
Seminole
how do you look at
doesn't
that?
enter English really until about 1760, 1765.
Right. So the Muskogee will be the ones, or Creek, as people would like to say. Some people even say, would you like to say that the word Gullah is already around going into this time frame, Dr. Dixon?
Yes, definitely.
So the word Gullah will predate the term Seminole as a tribe or in confederacy from your research.
Yes, definitely.
So when you've heard people say that the Gullah Geechee people also are known for the tie to this war, they call it the Gullah Wars, right? It's not the same Negro Wars in this case scenario.
Right. They have also been referred to as the Gullah Wars.
Right. So when we look at how long people such as the Gullah, the Wale, obviously maroon settlements throughout the Carolinas going into Florida, Alabama, going into Louisiana, these people that they're calling these settlements that are be calling Negroes or dark-skinned people have been mixing amongst indigenous people from the 15th century, from the time the Spanish first made contact, as some people would say, and obviously some people would say prior to that as well. But just to keep it a historical sense, that word Negro is tied to America and easily the 15th, 16th century, right? So obviously it's been Negroes living free in that land area, that territory,
the whole time.
The whole time.
Right. Because even when we look at before they get to North America, some of the earliest depictions of the Arwak in the Caribbean by the Spanish are called swarthy.
Correct. Right.
So
that's why I asked that question.
That is part of the evidence, And see, that's the thing about it, right, brothers? And this is partly why I don't talk a lot about and I get into these discussions, because what we need to do, right? Because we have the evidence in the Caribbean with the Arawaks. We have the evidence by the professor who was out in California in the 80s about Mexico, California, and the northern part of Central. We have the evidence about the blacks who predate the Aztecs, and the Aztecs paying homage to them with their stone building society.
Yep.
And so we have all of these different pieces of evidence. But see, that's the thing about it. If we really are going to make sure that the truth is told, right? What we have to do is get this evidence instead of continuously putting these small pieces of evidence together. We have to do sort of like an anthology piece where we look at all of these different regions, right? And there's one solid research. I wouldn't care if that research was a documentary or that research was a book and a documentary. But if we bring all of all of that empirical data, all of that research together, then we can then definitively, right? We can definitively change the negative ideologies that all blacks came from Africa.
Well, we can help you right now. I can tell you right now, the Autonomous Party, shout out to us. We can give you the answer to how to do that. No cap. This is how it's done. The mound building culture that Matt just spoke of, that is everywhere within our ancestry. The true Black Americans will fall within this mound building culture. That would be the Midwest, East Coast, down into the South. So our genealogy is the link to those cultures that show that we didn't come from no boat. Our people was already here and mixed in with different European nations. And when I say European, I ain't talking white. I'm just talking people from Europe who may have been a myriad of different skin colors, but we know for a fact that a good majority of them were swarthy as well in the beginning up until the 1800s. So it's funny when you spoke on that, because I agree with you. That's where all the disparaging came from, because terms like the Seminole, terms like Cherokee and Choctaw, this wasn't brought about by the original people. This was brought about a system, the same system you talking about. Those are the ones who robbed us of our true lineage and made everything be about Afro, because Afro take us off the land. And this is why none of our people want to connect with America, because they don't believe they got any tie.
See, what we're not talking about, but see, what you're talking about is the theoretical, which we know that the evidence is out there, right? What I'm now saying is the practical way in which we are going to present this evidence to the world is not in the fragmented pieces. If mound building is the core piece, then we start with mound building, and then we put the evidence from the different regions that continue to. If mound building is the what would be the foundation of the congruent piece there. Now, what I'm saying is that I'm not talking about the theoretical, because we've seen evidence. There's all types of evidence. There was this professor they silenced in the 80s who continuously said it. You know, what we're talking about is the practical way in which we present this evidence, in which it is undeniable. And I just want to give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. Checker Antidote. We all know Checker Antidote, right?
Yeah.
All right. This is the man who created the melon dosage and proved that all came back to melanated people. All races came back to melanated, right? Well, he stayed silent for years as he put all the empirical data and all of the historical data to go with the scientific empirical data, so that when he did present it, and he presented it at the National Academy of Sciences and other places, right, it was undisputable, because he didn't let pieces of the information out so that they can pick it apart. He kept it all until he had one complete, solid, undeniable research. And that's what I'm saying. That's the theoretical. I mean, that's the practical part of what we must do. It's fine to put out. You know, I see a lot of the social media, YouTube videos and all of that about the different ones. Like I've seen the professor in the 80s. I've seen the one with the Aztecs, right? But at some point, we have to put all of those together, put all of the pieces together in one congruent anthology piece, and then present that so that it becomes undeniable.
I mean, I got nothing against that part. Yeah.
Yeah, I ain't got no pressure.
Go ahead, Matt.
That's work. Now, I think that just, you know, as you said, and you mentioned a couple different people, obviously, like you said, the Aztecs and different things like that. I got to give a shout out to his Chief Tuscaloosa. Are you familiar with Chief Tuscaloosa,
Yes.
Dr. Dixon? All right.
Yes.
So, and obviously, 1540, his run into Hernando de Soto, and obviously the word Chief Tuscaloosa is tied to being, Black warrior. You know what I mean? And Lusa is in all of the five civilized tribes dictionary lexicon for us to be talking about the dark-skinned native that obviously would by the white people would call a Negro in any derogatory way they could use it in fashion. But in the same point of culturally on our side, as to Lucy, seems to be like they don't like to use that term. That's why they like to say Black Seminole. But even within the documentation that takes us back to the 1500s, all the way up until the Reconstruction treaties, where we have this word Estalusti being used to distinguish us from the Miccosukee, or people will call, today, of the five civilized tribes, American Indian. And the red man and black man in these regions fighting against the European going into this 18th century is very interesting on how they're now delineating who was native and who was not. I think the word Negroes, like you said, is being used. Have you really find these people actually saying that they came from out of Africa in your documentation?
Factions of the Seminole Nation, in which they now do a full differentiation. They have the term freedmen.
Yeah.
And so within that, those are those that are in the lineage goes specifically through the Maroon villages, meaning meaning that even if they had any type of Native American heritage, it was through their father, which means they didn't belong to a clan. And so that's where they began to really place the differentiation, whether or not you belong to a clan.
Now, does that
And
make
so,
sense in the matter of just being indigenous to the land, in your opinion? So, in that
it's what
said that. Do you feel that just because you're not tied to a clan, that a person's not indigenous to America, even if they're labeled now Black or Negro, because of the fact that they might not particularly belong to a particular clan? Because if they're mixing, and they're mixing, right? Your father's this, your mother's that, you're mixing. You know what I'm saying? However the case might be today. What you think about that?
And that's the thing about it, right? If you trace the quote unquote Native American heritage back, right, to which we are now, there's strong evidence that is being traced back to Siberia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not throughout that transformation period, right, and that cultural development, the matrilineal line becomes the important key. Now, whether they brought that from Siberia or it developed in time, that became a congruent part of their culture, that everything was matrilineal, not patrilineal. And so because there's the denial of any type of melanated people being indigenous here, when you couple that with the idea that you make Native Americans the indigenous people for here, right? Anything else has to be tied to them. Now, we're going to tie them to them according to how they see. Now you see how their culture then gets superseded, because the denial of any melanated people being indigenous is already set in place. So anything connected to it still has to go through the cultural ideas of these natives who have this Siberian
and I think
ancestry.
Now that you
I'm
say
glad you said
that,
Siberian ancestry,
yeah,
though.
because we gotta make a delineation here, because I understand what you're saying, but the
Right.
pushback that will be had is, like you said, telling the full story, is that those people, now that you're basically saying the Asian looking people that they would say that are the traditional Native Americans. So for our crowd that come listen to us, they're gonna look at this a little bit differently. So for the viewing audience, I want to help frame this. So what you're saying is, to be indigenous in the way the system is set up, you would have to have some type of ties to those Native American people. But see, the problem is when we do our genealogy and our history, people that look like that are no doubt would be considered indigenous by law to certain areas on the West Coast. But everything over here, they wasn't over here at this time period. And this is how they got written in through like the Bureau of Indian Affairs and things of that sort when they created these tribes. And when they come back and speak on this history now, this is when they write in the African narrative or the blacks from other places, when the Native American Indian in Florida at this time would look no different than what they would call a black person today.
For instance, Dr. Dixon, Osceola you mentioned, right?
Right.
Was Osceola not tied to a clan?
Yes. Osceola was tied to a clan, which is the Bird clan, because his mother, even though his mother was both black and Native American, her mother was Native American, so she belonged to a clan. So that made him belong to a clan.
Okay.
See, and John Horse, right? Even though John Horse was the son of a chief,
right?
He was still through the patrilineal line.
Not his mother.
So he did not belong to a clan. This is how he becomes the Black Seminole leader and is more closely associated and tied with Maroon villages.
Maroon, right? Yeah, because off top, if you don't got this clan thing, you're gonna live in this maroon situation.
Exactly.
Because of what. So it's a lot of indigenous people that's labeled Negroes who are living in this situation with this mixture. You know what I'm saying? And they've been mixing indigenous to the land for how long? You know what I'm saying? So I just don't see how people don't, the Gullah, you know what I'm saying? All these people are you know, been living amongst each other, mixing for centuries. You know, would you agree with that? At least centuries?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
The people that's from the Carolinas down easily, from the Gullah to the Maroon terms, settlements. We like to say Maroonville. Shout out to Maroonville. And obviously, Black Seminole term used the Negro Wars. These people who are in these Maroon settlements are basically technically indigenous, but they, or because they're not tied to a clan in certain situations you just broke down, will not be particularly counted on the ones that are going now to be considered 5 civilized tribes.
Right.
On a paperwork situation out there in Oklahoma, by the way,
not by blood.
After the Indian, by the Indian Removal Act as well. That's when they made the distinction, and I can show it. Monte, I wanted, matter of fact, the time is fine, but let me get that first. Matter of fact, don't put
which one?
Give me the one with the actual from the Senate .gov. Indian.senate.gov. I want to show Dr. Dixon this real quick because
is this from the Bureau of Indian Affairs?
Yeah, it's just going to show the Reconstruction Treaty, right? And in the Reconstruction Treaty, like how you said earlier, they're making a delineation and they're putting certain people now on a freedman role rather than being on the actual Indian role tied to this matriarchal part you broke down because of this clan system thing that you broke down. So, no, but funny enough, they did not. The term freedman is really more tied to technically the United States and that bureau more than the actual understanding that the indigenous people with that clan system understood to call these people that they're not calling themselves that in a cultural sense, but this is the thing, and it's obviously let you know we had shared it the other day, but I want to share it with you. You know what I'm saying? And showing that this word is definitely why we understand it to be older than, even like you said, the word Gullah is older than the word Seminole. So is this word Estalusti. But obviously in the Reconstruction, they made sure that they put this word in this document. I think you can go down to page 74.
What year is this document again?
This is
I can't see
this
that
is
date.
well, this one right here is dealing with the hearing, um, and it's obviously the 117th Congress, July 27th, 2022. This is something recent,
Okay.
but at the top, it's dealing with the actual 1866 treaty, the Reconstruction Treaty of 1866, to be exact. That's what it said at the top. Did you see that?
Yeah, I'll go back to it. Hold on.
Let's go. Let me see it real quick.
You see?
I'm gonna try to get it. You see how it says at the top? Select provisions of the 1866 Reconstruction treaties between the United States and Oklahoma tribes.
Right. And this is
All right.
what the Black Seminoles of Oklahoma are dealing with right now with this 2020. And I was at their meeting about 4 months ago. I was invited to their meeting. I guess that was about 4 months ago.
Page 78, Monte. Go ahead.
I just was looking at something. This dude right here is the governor or something. John Tester. I gotta go back to that. All right, but you say page
Page 78.
Right
Just so while he's
right.
talking, go ahead. My bad, Dr. Dixon.
Go ahead. Page 78. I didn't mean to interrupt you. My apologies.
No, you're good.
78.
Page 78. It's going to get down. It's going to start talk really weird. I want to get to the Seminole because we're talking about the Black Seminole, because obviously it has all 5 tribes tied to this document, but it's the Seminole one that is specific. So and this word, oh, there it is, 78. All right, you can make it a little bit bigger so everybody can kind of see this.
Yeah.
I'll read from where it says,
All
right, here it goes. So it says here, obviously, I'm gonna read the second paragraph, but obviously I was talking about the freedmen descendants and everything, and the tribal leaders, etc. But much of the opposition to the freedmen descendants is rooted in anti-blackness, in which the U.S. government must take some responsibility by setting up separate roles for freedmen tribal members, establishing blood quantum for the purpose of determining when restrictions on allotments would end, instead of allowing each tribal to the state if they wished a restricted allotment or not, allowing Oklahoma, and I might lose my spot, upon statehood to set up discriminatory laws against persons any African ancestry, and the U.S. setting up a federal programs in the earlier part of the 20th century in which eligibility was determined based on blood quantum set by the Dawes Convention. Another example is in 1978, the DOI distributing the judgment, funds to Creeks by blood and unregistered Eastern Creeks, such as those who later became members of the now fairly recognized Alabama-based Porch Band of the Creek Indians, who remained east of the Mississippi, but not to Creek freedmen and freedmen descendants, asserting that Creek freedmen descendants' ancestors were not tribal members in 1818. The Department of Interior ignored the fact that a fair number of persons on the Creek by blood section of the roll had ancestors who were members of other Indian tribes in 1818. Many Cherokees became Creek citizens during the 1820s based on the agreement between the two nations, and that many persons, you can slide up, Monte, later registered as Creek freedmen had a parent who was a Creek Indian listed on rolls prior to laws such as the 1857 Creek Old Settler roll that died before the Dawes movement. This is another proof of the tribal anti-black attitude is that the tribal governments have not tried to remove other tribal minorities with treaty rights. Example are the Shawnees and the Delaware Indians adopted into the Creek Nation. Descendants of the Creek Indians adopted into the Cherokee Nation during the 1820s with no federal treaty rights to Cherokee citizenship also have continued to their Cherokee tribal membership with no opposition by tribal leadership. The Yuchi Indians have continued to be members of the Muskogee Creek Nation, although they are not Muskogee people by ancestry. Seminole and Chickasaw tribes also continue membership, and it says of adopted Indians, and it gives you an example, Lula versus Powell. But I'm gonna slide down a little bit. You get to the word where I'm looking for here. That all these tribes and all these different mixtures are taking place, and as we get down, you can go down to a little more down to the bottom. You know what I mean? Because I got it right. I make sure in as much. Because I know our time is maybe
That's
on
what
this
it's
book a little
called.
bit different. Well, when I just told you to go to page 78,
Yeah.
search on page Estelusti. Let's just do it like that.
All right, hold on.
Because then maybe it's different because they're on a computer and I know I'm going off page based off of my phone right now.
All right.
There it is. Boom. In as much. What page does it say on? Am I right? It's the right page. It's the right one.
Oh, yeah, but I don't know the page. It say
Okay, no
78. Just go
Yeah, I
rock
guess
out though.
Okay, but either way, in as much, and this is where it gets to their highlighted blue right there, is in as much as there are among Seminoles many persons of African descent and blood who have no interest or property in the soul and no recognized civil rights. It's stipulated that the hereafter these persons and their descendants and much such other of the same race shall be permitted by said nation to settle there, shall have and enjoy all rights of native citizens, and the laws of said nation shall be equally binding upon all persons or whatever race or color who may be adopted by as citizens of members or said tribe. The treaty with the Seminole Indians, March 21st, 1866, the U.S. Seminole Nation of the Indians, Article, Florida 14, Statute 755, and all that withstanding, this sweeping language, the United States itself continued to distinguish the Estelusti, then in parentheses says, now freedmen from tribal members of Native American ancestry. So they're letting you know that people already were being known as this term, obviously going back to the 15th easily century, but now in the 17th century, now being called freedmen out there in Oklahoma amongst the Seminole, they're being distinguished to where they can no longer, like you said, because of this clans thing in our land.
And it was established early on while they were on that trip from Florida to the Arkansas Territory. Then, of course, they move a little further west, and it becomes within the Arkansas Territory, and it becomes Oklahoma. But this is where the beginnings of the quote unquote title freedman comes in, because it's the distinction that Native Americans had between the matrilineal and the patrilineal, and those who had pure maroon heritage. Now, what is interesting is the United States government has said it before, and they have had to reiterate it, that they are no longer making those distinctions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they've been out there, they're supposed to have these rights guaranteed to them. It's actually the Seminole Native Americans of Oklahoma that are denying them, and they're in the process of getting legal representation to get their rights. And this is part of what we're trying, and we're not trying, what we are doing with the documentary. See, that's the whole thing about using the historical information to help solve issues that they're facing today. It's not the U.S. government. The U.S. government has long since even the playing field. It's the actual Seminole Native Americans of Oklahoma who are still denying the Black Seminoles their rights that the U.S. government has long since said they are entitled to.
But that's because they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, speaking of the government in this fashion. And here's how you know. And here you just read, Mac was talking about the Department of Interior, which used to be the War Department. So this department is what set up the BIA. Is where the BIA came from. The BIA is who put certain people in charge and created the Native American designation and put the families that they wanted to be in charge of these Native American roles to be on. This is how you get roles today where these folks telling you their genealogy coming from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and they white as can be. There's no way possible that you were the original people of this land.
That's the $5 Indian.
And that's all civilized tribes.
So we trying to
all
say
civilized tribes. That none of them are different. They're all the same. They're fake. Yeah, they created.
The one drop rule. How is he going to avoid that one drop rule? How is it we go from having this mixture to all of a sudden now you distinguishing a group of people based off of a one drop scenario? You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, if you got 3 out of 8 ancestors, one of them is African, and that's what distinguishes you from being now a part or put on this particular role. But you could have 3 or 4 ancestors out of those 8 that are definitely indigenous to different tribes that were underneath these Confederacy terms. So at the end of the day, you know, I see somebody in the chat also mentioned that it was early, what we call black folk. They say early was in Oklahoma. We've covered that. Oklahoma burning with 9 ether. Yeah, there was folk already, free people of color out there in Oklahoma before 1830. You know what I'm saying? With the Indian Removal Act. We know that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, come on. Like this is why this whole distinction thing is interesting, because, you know, who's to say that these people weren't in these areas living in, like you said, they had their own tribal councils, right? Dr. Dixon, am I wrong about that? Did you not say that the Maroon settlements, did not the Maroon groups and these people, the Negro Wars, did you not in the book break down in your dissertation that these group people were governing themselves? They had their own tribal government situation, so they were moving as a government. That's what basically needs to be understood. This Estalusti had their own government. See what I'm saying? That were warring against the European. Can you break that down before we get out of here, sir? I know you've been with us for a little while, and I know it's a school night. I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us.
Definitely.
No problem. Yeah, I'll make it quick because you're right. I do have to wrap it up. I just noticed the time. I think the simplest way to understand it is for those who were outside, right? For those who were outside of the Klan, who were under the Maroon villages and lived primarily in the Maroon villages, right? They were using what would probably be considered a hybrid type of situation in which they were surviving and governing themselves, right? And so when I say hybrid, I mean you have some things that they are garnering from Native Americans, because some of them they're just Native Americans through their father. But then there are those that have the pure Maroon heritage. And so these are both. You have to understand this now. These are both. These are Gullah people who do have indigenous Black or melanated American heritage, as well as those, for the numbers that were brought in, those that do have the African heritage. And we have the evidence of that, particularly with, like I said earlier, the pottery. So we have those cultural evidence there. So what we're talking about is a self-governing governance that is using these different aspects in order to maintain order within the society and within the maroon villages. And there was order. There was order. There was unity. There was a significant level, right? There was a significant level of status that went toward the elderly, right? It went from the elders down. And so all of these things go in to factor their self-governance.
And for everybody in the chat, though, real quick, I want to make sure we plug the website again. So y'all, check out Dr. Dixon at Black Seminole Project.com. We put it in the chat, and you can see the book right here. Because one thing I want to make it clear is we definitely agree on the Negro War part. We just gonna continue, I would love to have more conversations so we can really get the full context out to the people, because we just want to let people know who was in these areas and how it even became that Negro War. Because I think that part of the story, it needs to be expounded on a little bit more, because I think it's a lot of whitewashing and Native, the other side of the Native, because I don't want to say they're not Native Americans, because that's a made-up construct, but our side of the indigenous story, I feel like is being left out. You know what I mean? And I would love to talk about that more.
Because it's always, like I said, it goes all the way back to the roots of the idea of light, godly is white, and devil negative is black, and it has grown from that point.
Supremacy.
And so we gotten to the point, and it's in the book as well. I discuss it, where everything, right, becomes blacks in the company of. That we didn't do anything. Everything that we did is we either got it from somebody else, or somebody had to guide us, somebody had to teach us this, that, and the third. But the fact of the matter is, there's undeniable when you look at the Seminole, heritage, the Seminole story, there's undeniable evidence that those melanated people within the Seminole Nation were leaders, and they were also heavily involved in all of the three wars.
Yeah.
And so they were also involved in the actual day-to-day lives and the day-to-day things that transpired between the different villages. It was not blacks in the company.
Right. Like they were just some slaves.
I think
I agree with that.
There's a Black Seminole here in Florida by the name of Jason Campbell. His brother Campbell, not Jason, excuse me. Brother Campbell, he has lineage in all areas. His grandmother, his lineage, he has an ancestor that was enslaved to the Creeks, and she joined the Seminoles. He has an ancestor that is directly lineage to the Seminoles, and he has an ancestor that was a pure Maroon that was at the Negro Fort. And that's really where his family originated and got together at the Negro Fort. And then they moved down, when the Negro Fort was burned, when most went all the way down to Angola, some stopped along the way, and his family stopped in Crystal River, which is, of course, on the way down to Angola. But the thing about it is, he explains it this way as well. He was like, it was purely a symbiotic relationship because what they got in terms of being able to live off of the land, the gator hunting, because he wrestles alligators, right? He does it for the Hard Rock casinos. He lives on the reservation now. He lives on Big Cypress Reservation with his wife, who is a direct descendant of Osceola and belongs to the Bird clan. And so he says that it was always that symbiotic relationship. They taught, blacks about what wildlife they could live off of, the wrestling of the alligator, the turtle eggs, the alligator eggs, things of that
And see,
nature.
that's my only part. I hate that. I can't let that ride, cause
You think that the indigenous Americans, melanated Americans, were already doing those things themselves?
100%,
Okay.
Easy,
And
because our people been doing
wait
that.
a minute. What I'm saying is this, right? What I'm saying is this: for those maroon villages that were predominantly from those Gullah who were Africans, this very well may have been true, though.
Okay, so here goes the part with maroon. Maroon isn't a lineage. So, for example, I could have been Choctaw running from whatever was happening in Mississippi, Louisiana area, and I say I want to go to Florida. I'm a maroon too. You see what I'm saying? So I've already been gator hunting. I already been with them. I already been doing all of that, but I was doing it in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Now I'm doing it in Florida, but I'm still a maroon. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
so,
but see,
so
that's
African
the thing
would be
about
different.
It.
He can still be a maroon.
We have to respect the fluidness of that term, right? Because the maroon villages, we're talking about maroon villages that go from just on the east side of the Swanee River, right? Which is pretty much north central Florida down Gainesville, Lake County.
Yeah.
All the way over to the Mississippi. So you have to think that's got to be a lot of fluidness,
a lot of ground
between what we're talking
West
about
Florida,
with
East
maroon.
Florida, yeah.
So whether or not we're not trying to, and that's the whole point of what we want to do with the documentary, is not generalize.
Okay.
Right? We don't want to generalize. What we're saying is, for Brother Campbell and his maroon heritage, right?
His lineage, his story.
Right. His maroon heritage and lineage. And see, and that's the main thing about what we want to do with the documentary, which is, right, have as many members of the Black Seminoles from all 5 regions be a part, because we don't want, and we're not going to have the quote unquote people like me as the experts dominating the the documentary, and then just some excerpts of stories and anecdotes from Black Seminoles themselves. No. What we're doing is we're going to say and state some historical facts on each region. And then from that point on, the Black Seminoles themselves. So you get a full perspective of the different types of maroons. You get a perspective of those who belong in the clan. You get a perspective from those who have the heritage, but it's patrilineal. You see, you get all of those different perspectives. And we're going to do it from a regional perspective, so you get the idea where we start in Florida, and this is how it originated, and this is where it started. But when they left, primarily after the first Seminole War, and they go down into the Caribbean, and they are on first Green Bay, and then they migrate over to Red Bay on Andros,
The
Green Bay,
Bahamian. Shout out to my folks in the
then
Bahamas.
Red Bays, right, and on Andros Island in Bahamas. Here's the culture. Here's the parts of the culture that stayed intact. Here are the part of the culture that it developed by the surroundings and the environment of the Bahamas. And then the same thing for Oklahoma. Same thing for Mexico, for Nacimiento, and then the same thing when they return and come back to the United States into Texas. And that's what we plan to do. And that's the whole thing about it, being able to give the whole perspective.
Hey, well, I hope that in today's conversation, for those of the people who haven't heard of you before, that they got a good promotion to want to come check you out and see what you all about.
And I invite this as I do every time I speak, particularly when I speak to Seminoles, Black Seminoles. I give my email, professoraedixon.com. professoraedixon@gmail.com. You can email me. I will email you my dissertation, which the book, of course, is a public history book, but the dissertation is all of the cited research. So you can read these documents yourself. You can look at the bibliography. You can look at the citations, and you can look at these documents for yourself. I invite you to email me, and I will email you the dissertation.
I just put it up there on so everybody can see it. It's professoraedixon@gmail.com, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is it. I invite anyone. Email me. All you have to do is say, I'd like a copy of that dissertation. And I will reply with it as an attachment. And also in it, like I said, at the end of that dissertation, you will see a lengthy bibliography that you can go through these documents from the 19th century newspapers, the Pensacola Gazette, and the other newspapers as such, to the U.S. congressional papers, to the Indian Bureau of Affairs papers. All of them are listed in the bibliography, and where you can quickly get online now and pull most of them up.
Hey, well, that's a beautiful thing. Mac, what you got on it, bro?
Oh man, no man, I appreciate him pulling up and just answer the questions and bringing more highlight to it, man. Shout out to Zarian Hadley, man. Who obviously plugged me to Mr. Dixon, Dr. Dixon.
Yeah.
And again,
shout out to him, man.
Shout out to
and
good brother.
You know what I mean? Good man, good brother, man. So I would just want people to support this project, because a lot of people do got ancestry to Gullah. A lot of people in the Southeast got ancestry to Yuchi. People got ancestry to the Wale. People got ancestry to a lot of different groups of the Southeast that got absorbed into what we call the 5 civilized tribes. And now they're, because of this clan matriarchal parts and stuff like that, might have been disenfranchised in the way of being tied to the nations of people that their ancestors were tied to in these areas. So, that's the Lucy. That's why we definitely tapped into Dr. Dixon, because we need more projects like this to get out and more people to support them so their story can get told. So that's why if you have any lineage tied to any of the information you heard tonight and you would like to share it, as he just did, most definitely reach out to him, or definitely reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we'll get you in contact with him and or Zarian to make sure that your story can be told. And with that being said, we appreciate everybody that pulled up to agree to disagree. But that's why we do it autonomously over here, like we do it, these conversations. Shout out to Dr. Dixon. Y'all have a good night.
Thank y'all
Appreciate
for having
you.
us once again.
Yes, sir. Peace, y'all.
Love.
Peace.
with the
This could take quite a bit of time.
Pardon my autonomy. I know one day they'll honor me. This ain't pertaining to 28 Deuteronomy. Self-determination, controlling our situation. Ain't no more indoctrination from pale faces. How the fuck you bummy and broke but a pair of races? My lineage free people of color with a left make each nigga. This right here maroon, now it ain't burgundy. If you plotting murder, I'm certain that you'll need surgery. Hurt from when the burner squeeze. Protecting tribe business. Only consulting with governments tried to tribe with it. Please don't confuse us with those considered native. Semi-autonomy never was in our nature. Just address me as Estelusti. Wild Indian status and Cherokees riding Ruchis. In my war bonnet, if you want it, bring it to your region. And black forces the same color the European. Pardon my autonomy. I know one day they'll honor me. This ain't pertaining to 28 Deuteronomy. Self-determination, controlling our situation. Ain't no more indoctrination from pale faces.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folk. You never find a white aborigine. Aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine.
Every day I wake, I make my mind up. I'ma be the one, be the truth, be the way. Yeah. Every day I wake, I make my mind up. Gotta keep my mind on the because they only telling their side of the story. Out here telling lies like they on Morid. And poor rich kids get their money on phone it. But down here in the hood, yeah, we know Forex. We growing up, yeah. We got the good. Good of them assets, good of my bag. Get rid of cash before the whole market crash. A news flash, just a blast from the past. We gonna smash it. Be prepared to hit the gas, yeah.
Build a land, get the wealth, change your name up. Get the title in your hands, switch the game up. Melanation, elevation, arise. We the vibe, blood eye, and we travel.
Try.
Blood eye, and we travel.
Woo. That's my child. Woo.
Blood eye, and we travel. Hey, hey, hit him with the higher. Yeah.
Sherry no Aka from Virginia. Yeah. I know I'm more because I'm blessed. I know I'm more. I passed the test.
We got to see with the true eyes. We need some brand new bright ideas. We got the hearts and some great minds, yeah. If we could all just be sincere.
Build a land, get the wealth, change your name up. Get the title in your hands, switch the game up. Melanation, elevation, arise. We the vibe, blood eye, and we travel.
Try.
Blood eye, and we travel.
Woo. That's my child. Woo.
Blood eye, and we travel. Build a land, get the wealth, change your name up. Get the title in your hands, switch the game up. Melanation, elevation, arise. We the vibe, blood eye, and we travel. Hey, hey, hit him with the higher, yeah.
right.